Wow. I forgot what I'm supposed to say. Um, Hello, Internet. I'm here with my beautiful friend Stacy, and we just wanted to have a conversation on boundaries today, right? Because we feel that in this difficult time, some people have different experiences, and probably it's most important now for people to realize or know even how they can set their own boundaries and how they can be respectful of other people's boundaries. Hi,
Yeah.
Stacy.
Hi. So
How
good
are
to
you?
see you.
So good to see you too.
I love that we're both wearing bright colors.
Yes, I mean, it's spring. We're here. It's spring. We have to celebrate somehow.
Yes.
So how have you been doing?
I've been good.
Since our last time?
Yeah. I'm finding, and I think we've talked about this a little bit, but I'm finding that even in just 1 hour, kind of the range of emotions that are present, I'm experiencing within myself, even emotions that kind of seem opposite, like excited and scared, or ready and not ready, things that in my head I've kind of made opposite, or they're all true. Like they're all true at the same time. They're all true in the same moment, in the same hour, in the same day, while we're experiencing this, this pandemic. And it's like the dial, the volume is turned up a little bit on our experience.
Yeah.
Are you feeling that way? Are you having, like, what is your emotional landscape like during these days?
It's like this. It's like this. Absolutely. It's going from, oh my God, what is going to happen? When is it going to end? What are we going to all do? Where is the money going to come from? All of these different things. And then I sit down and meditate. Sometimes I can be crying when I'm meditating, so it's like I'm releasing something. Sometimes I'm be laughing and come up with different ideas for myself. So yeah, it's really like this. It's yeah.
It is. It's like, and it's almost like a spiral, because it's like the emotions go back on themselves even.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And I know, so the last time we saw each other in person, we were doing a similar thing after our photo shoot together, which was super fun.
Yeah.
And then, so you are doing coaching.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yep.
I know that in the past couple of months, you've been doing some sort of group coaching, specifically on the topic of boundaries.
Yeah.
What have you learned, and what do you see people struggling with? How are you helping them? What are the tips you can give?
Yeah, great. So I decided to do a 4-day training in a group of women around boundaries, because it was, I think, March or something, where I was really thinking about the women that I love coaching and the women that I love working with, and both the clients, my current clients, but then also the ones I don't have yet. And where I really shine, or the kinds of clients I love working with, are women who are outputting a lot. So they're like giving a lot at work. They're giving a lot to their families. They really care deeply.
Of course.
But maybe they haven't practiced prioritizing themselves. So some, like at the end of the week or the month or the year, they look back and they're like, wait a second, where did all my time go? Where did all my energy go? And so part of my work is in my coaching is helping women to prioritize themselves so that they can spend their time, really invest. I like using the word invest more than spend. Invest their time and energy in ways that they love, ways that reflect them.
Right.
So when I was thinking in March about wanting to do a training, a free training online, I thought, boundaries are the major make or break whether we're prioritizing ourselves or prioritizing what other people need or want from us.
Right. Yeah, and it reminds me also, one of my mentors, he said in one of his talks, sometimes saying no is more important than saying yes, specifically for the purpose of protecting yourself, to I guess to keep your own tank filled so that you can
Yeah.
give other people.
Yeah.
And also, so you and I also did the strengths coaching. So when I was helping you to understand your innate talents, and I remember in one of our sessions, we discovered that because your talents, your uniqueness is based in those, what we call in Gallup, relationship building and influencing domains, which means you need to be around people. And so the challenge, I remember as you were describing that to me, was you were spending a lot of time around, or rather, working on developing doing some business development activities, right?
Yeah.
Let's say, like, in front of your computer most of the time.
Yeah.
And so you felt drained, if I remember. And so we figured out that with your talents, you need to be around people, you need to be talking to people, you need to be influencing people, helping people. So now with this situation, this ongoing pandemic, obviously with social distancing and things like that, so how you're filling your own tank?
Yeah. What a great question. It links back to this boundaries group a little bit. So I started this group and I did these 4 training sessions, and I've been going into this group and connecting with them, and it really fills me up to help kind of be a boundaries cheerleader a little bit
Mm-hmm.
for people, and have them kind of share. Like just yesterday, I posted a video there about sharing boundary wins. And today I've been getting these notifications on my phone where people in the group have said, "Oh, I have a boundary win."
Mm-hmm.
So that really fills me up. That really gets that connection piece
Mm-hmm.
for me. And I'll never forget what you said that one day where I was like, "Oh my gosh, Katya, I've been behind the computer too much." And you said, "Stacy, you need connection like you need oxygen."
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that, because it was like, yeah, you're right. I need that, like that constant kind of conversation back and forth going. And I feel like I can really get that in this group. And it's fun because I think a lot of people have this idea of boundaries that, about like this militant sort of like angry, boundaries are bad, and people that said boundaries are mean and selfish. And I love just like taking all of that out of there and making it about, BrenéBrown says boundaries are what's okay with me and what's not okay with me. So helping people bring some ease back in there. And then I also love working with my coaching clients. So that's a big bright spot for me. And usually I'm doing a lot of audio calls, but now with the pandemic, I'm starting to do more Zoom calls, and that kind of helps with the
a little bit
connected.
I remember you and I talked about this maybe a month or so ago when we had our own Zoom call to catch up, and I remember we were talking about how obviously it's difficult for people who, like you and I, we are so much about being around people, and we love people, and we love to help people, and of course the Zoom sort of can give you that, you still see the person, but then there's still that physical presence piece is missing. How has that been for you? Are you
Well, I've been, and I can tell this story later, but I've been living, so I've been in Georgia with my boyfriend, and we've been staying with 2 of his brothers and 1 brother's girlfriend. So I've been living in a house with 4 adults in addition to and 4 dogs. So I've been getting the connection.
A lot of physical presence.
Right. Although now I've kind of stepped into what I needed, and I'm in an Airbnb. Blaine, my boyfriend, and I are here, and we've got a lot of spaciousness now. But yeah, that physical presence thing is really an interesting one, because I would have been, you know, the plan was for me to be back in New York City by now, and I would have been back in New York, probably in an apartment alone, like so many of our friends and people we know. Yeah. So, and I'm finding it really fascinating talking to a lot of people in different cities and different places, where the people that are alone, you know, miss that human contact and miss that touch. And then, you know, I've got friends whose 2 kids are now at home, and they're trying to homeschool them, and they're working 1 or 2 jobs. And they're like, man, if I could be alone, that would be amazing. Like, alone time is their precious resource. So it's really an interesting, you know, not to mention all the essential workers, folks working in grocery stores, or, you know, the medical field, or drivers, you know, that they don't have an option around proximity or closeness. So yeah, I'm just finding it, I went off on a tangent a little bit there, but I'm finding it really interesting, the being around people, and what, you know, finding a balance of that, and finding tuning into what we need around alone time versus connection time. Because that's really different now. And even in Zooms and calls, you know, I'm sure you get to a point where, okay, I can't do another Zoom call, or I can't do another phone call. Like, I just need some quiet.
Yeah, I definitely do have, I sort of set limits for myself, where I would say to myself, I will only have, let's say, like, I have a couple of business calls I need to make, right? And then I still want to connect with my friends, but I can only take as much, right? I need to go, I'm still very much an introvert, right? So I need to recharge so that I can be, you know, energized for the next day or next call or something like that. So yeah, so it definitely is a very interesting, plus obviously this sort of global high level of stress doesn't help either, right? You can't completely close yourself to that. So that also affects how much more, not much more time that we need to recharge, but we need to be very, very mindful of that, right? Where our energy goes and how to replenish it.
Yes. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. You know, I've been thinking a lot more about, like, how much time do I spend scrolling on social media? You know, how much time numbing out on Netflix movies? There was one I was watching the other day. I was like, I don't even think, like, how did this movie get made? This acting is so bad. Like, what am I doing? You know, or there's something, the news, right? Like, learning to create boundaries around, you know what, I'm not going to watch the news every single day, or I'm not going to scroll on Facebook before I go to sleep. Like I think we're all having to renegotiate our own boundaries, and what replenishes us versus what kind of takes away from our battery.
Yeah, that reminds me, thank you so much. We talked about this a little bit before we started. Thank you so much for sending me that podcast by BrenéBrown, because she talks about this in that particular one that you sent to me. She said, you know, find your, when it comes to news, right? So find your sources that are trustworthy, you know, that you trust, and sort of limit it to that. Obviously, like, stay informed and you know, learn what you need to learn, but you really need to limit the intake of all, because I think the word she used is, what is it, fear mongering or something like that. Because yes, there's still, even also Bill Maher, I don't know if you follow him, but he was talking about how he's like, people, please stop with this this crazy headlines, like, everything is going to, I don't know, explode. So there's definitely a lot of that out there, where just reading a headline puts you in a state of stress, and how
Yeah.
important it is to just be, to discern, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
And,
there's so much constantly coming at us. And I think at the beginning, when this was all first starting to happen, mid-March, social media has now become a way that a lot of us access the news, right?
exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and some folks are, of course, are still accessing news on TV, but it's like social media was the way to stay connected, but then it opened you up to, sort of these sensationalized or fear-mongering stories, that, again, like, I'm kind of obsessed with boundaries right now, but it's like you came to social media because you had a need around connection, or I'll speak from my own experience. If I had a need around connection, and then I get like a barrage of news,
Mm-hmm.
and then my connection need didn't get met, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm more anxious and fearful and worried than I was before.
Mm.
And then it's like, okay, it becomes, it seeps in.
Right.
That stuff seeps in a way that's hard to notice, or hard to manage, I guess.
Yeah. One of the things that I do, actually, I have used this tool for many years, and I feel like especially now it's super important. I have on Facebook on the desktop. I don't know how to do it on the mobile device, but on a desktop I have this plugin, and I think it's called like Newsfeed Eradicator or something like that. So when I
just heard of this.
Yes, it's magical, because basically I absolutely agree with you. Like, when you go online and you open one of you like, in 2 seconds you forget what was the purpose, right? So for me, for many years, the purpose to go on Facebook is to, well, let's say, do some work, right? I need to see, who messaged me, who I need to respond to, what do I want to learn from multiple groups that I'm part of. But, when you open it, and then there's this, news feed and you get down this rabbit hole, and it's like, okay, I just wasted, I don't know, 10 minutes of my precious time reading, I don't know, something that did not necessarily feed my brain or anything like that. So anyway, so this news feed eradicator that I've been using for many years, I love it, because you go on Facebook, again, on your desktop, and it's absolutely quiet. It's absolutely quiet. There's nothing, but they also give you like an inspirational quote that you see on your wall.
Oh, cool.
Right. And then you just go and do, you go about your business. You remember what you were supposed to do, why you came there. So this is one of the sort of life hacks that I've been using. And I feel like, especially now, it's super important if people might need that extra help with boundaries.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. It's like coming into a clean space.
It's quiet.
Yeah, wow, that's beautiful. What a wonderful way to take charge of your online experience and decide, this is okay with me, this is not okay with me.
Yeah. And only when I think I've been sort of observing this about myself, when I feel that I have the energy to go and read the, just the feed, I'll do that. But it's the same with news, right? I in the morning I try not to go there, because I need to prepare for the day. So I do my, different routines. I have healthy breakfast, I meditate, all of those different things. And then when I'm in a state of mind that I can intake some, real world, then I go and I read it.
That's perfect. But you're at choice. That is wonderful.
Yeah. Because otherwise, how can you keep your mental state,
Yeah,
healthy?
yeah. I've been doing like some old school stuff, like setting the timer on my phone. Like saying, okay, I have this task that I wanted to do. I'm setting the timer for 30 minutes and I'm going to be done when it's done. And not part of that is a boundary thing, but part of it is also I can get into this sort of stickler inner critic that tells me it's not good enough. You have to keep fiddling with it. And so my way of combating that is to set a timer and set boundaries for myself. Like, nope, I'm not going to fiddle with this thing for 3 days, like my website or something, it's like, I'm just going to let it go and be done with it.
Yeah. You're like, thank you, voice in my head. I heard you, but you're not correct right now. Step aside. I have other things to do.
Yeah.
Can we also talk a little bit about that other topic in the BrenéBrown podcast? The how did you call that? Comparative suffering.
Yeah.
Because you brought it up to me in our last conversation when I was like, oh, I feel so privileged to something. I don't have to be in the hospital, watching this, observing this, and helping in that way. I'm in the comfort of my home. I'm safe. I'm healthy. And then and you sent me that podcast, which was super important. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I was going to ask you, like, what did you take away from that?
So basically what she's talking about, which was a great reminder for myself, is it's interesting. I've had many hardships in my life, which made me, as you yourself told me, very resilient, where I don't even recognize this anymore. But I do have that constant sort of, I do compare, like, how can I say that I am not having it good right now when there's somebody else who is having it so much worse? But what Brené talks about is that basically when you're in a state of mind, you are shutting down empathy for yourself, because you think if you sort of use that amount of empathy, like it's a limited resource, right? So like if you use that on yourself, you won't be able to give it to others, which is not true. And then also she said an interesting thing about how empathy is antidote to shame. So basically what happens with us when we are comparing our lack of suffering to somebody else's bigger suffering is that we're shaming ourselves, and this is not healthy. Right? And I love that expression that you use, how empathy is the antidote. Like empathy can kill shame, especially when you turn empathy toward yourself.
Yeah. I've been noticing that and kind of soaking in those waters for a while around shame and empathy. And I loved the conversation you and I had about it, because there is a truth that, like, I'm not an essential worker. I have no idea what it's like to be on the front lines. I have no idea. So, to be like an ICU nurse or a doctor or somebody who's has to go to work at their grocery store, right? Because that's their job. And when I was in the place of, okay, I'm living with 4 adults and 4 dogs, and this is new, and Georgia is a state I had never even visited before October, and now I live here. And it was like, when I was in that place of comparative suffering and like, oh, I don't have it nearly, not even a 10th, not even a 20th as bad as other people, I was totally blocking empathy for myself and feeling guilty and feeling shamey that I wasn't doing a better job from where I was. But the moment I started to recognize, well, Stacy, like, to check in with myself, like, you've never lived with 4 adults in your entire life. Like, that's not in college, not growing up. Like, that's a totally new experience, you know, and you've never been a small business owner, except since August. And you've especially never been one during a global pandemic.
Yeah.
So like finding the little windows of empathy for myself, just like I would with a friend or with a coaching client, or like with you in that conversation that we had, like, well, you know, things aren't completely 100% great and okay for anybody right now.
Yeah.
And when we use that, you know, that guilt and shame can be used as a weapon against ourselves so easily.
Right.
And we don't need more of those right now.
No. And it goes back into that whole idea of mental health, because if you keep thinking those thoughts about yourself, I mean, there's no surprise that you don't want to get out of bed, right? There's no surprise that you don't want to do something healthy for yourself, eat something healthy, you know, move, like physical exercise. I was recording another episode yesterday, and that's what we were talking about with my other friend, you know, why movement is so important. Oh, by the way, Brené also talks about that. If you remember, she talks about why movement is important, because we hold anxiety and stress on a physical, like in our bodies, right? And you have to move it out. Like you have to move it out, and the only way to move it out is to get out of bed and just stretch, jump, whatever it is, right? So that's but yes, like going back to those mental to those thoughts, those harmful thoughts, it's especially now, it's not helpful.
Yeah, I think I've had a lot of conversations with people about how their mind is not the safe place to quarantine right now.
Yeah.
Like that our bodies, tuning into our body's wisdom and our spirit's wisdom can be a bit safer place to hang out, because our mind has a lot of those inner critics and those inner judgments that can come up and easily hijack us and take over. Whereas our bodies don't lie. You know, It's like if my neck is a little funky, or like I'm excited and I feel like a tingle up my spine, like my body keeps me in the now and keeps me connected. Whereas my mind can wander off, oh no, where am I going to live in July? I don't know. And, you know, a million worries, and not to say that we can't command and control our minds a little better, but there's a lot of wisdom living in our bodies. And I love that movement reminder, because there's something to it. There's a reason that our bodies are carrying around this head, you know, like tuning into our whole self for wisdom feels really important.
It just reminds me actually of the exercise that we know from our shared mentor, Regina Tamashauer, the yesing, you know, when we jump with, you know, there's something about it. It's like the first time I saw it, I was like, this is so bizarre. But then when I tried it myself, it works. It somehow uplifts you, right? Can you talk? I feel like because you've actually worked with her for a while, can you explain to people what that is?
Yeah. So there's and feel free to jump in if I, you know, miss something. But there's a tool in the School of Womanly Arts called yesing, and that is essentially getting right with whatever's going on. So, you know, like I can go to my example of like, yes, now I'm living in this, you know, I was living in this house with 4 adults and 4 dogs. Like, yes, I'm a guest in someone else's home during a quarantine. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, this, whatever else that I had like chosen to make wrong or whatever, the yes move, it gets you in agreement with what's going on. And I'm going to just show you, I'm going to stand up.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. So when we're going, so in the move, you're jumping up and down and you're saying yes. So your body is saying yes, yes, yes. And when your body's in that posture of excitement, jumping, yesing, there is something that happens neurologically
Yes, definitely.
between your body and your mind, and you kind of trick yourself into finding the rightness in the situation. It's the same as if like, I could go on and on about this, Katya.
Okay, yes, please.
But
yes.
Yes.
Let's do it.
There is so much wisdom in our bodies and in embodiment. And both through my coaching training, but also now recently, I just took a class on positive intelligence. And there's so much power that we can access when we engage our bodies. So like, let me give you an example. So empathy, let's talk about empathy. So the part of ourself that needs to share empathy, you know, with ourselves and with others, that's going to look a little different. Like that posture of empathy, you know, when we embody that, we might like tilt our head a little bit and kind of, I mean, I think about like rocking a baby with empathy and like, you know, softening the gaze a little bit, like, oh, this baby is just perfect and I love this baby unconditionally. Like this softer kind of empathy has a different posture,
right?
Than like, you know, guilt or shame, like, oh, guilt, shame, oh, you know, that kind of thing has a really different posture. But I can move into empathy in my body, or I can move into like activate, like, okay, it's time, Stacy, to work on the website. Let's go.
Yeah.
And I can change by moving my body into these different postures. It then becomes easier to have my mind come along and think about, you know, what do I need to focus on when I'm in this empathy posture or the activate posture? Like what needs to get done? And it's, you know, you could call it all sorts of things. You could call it personas. You could call it embodiment. You could call it, you know, bridging your mind and body's wisdom. Or, you know, like that TED Talk, I think the woman's name is Amy Cuddy, about like power stance.
Yes.
You know, when you're up here doing your power stance like this, it's really hard to be like, oh, I'm going to hide. I don't want to take up space. It's scary. It's like, here you're taking up space. Your feet are planted firmly on the ground. Your spine is straight. And there's a power and an activation energy there that cannot be denied. So
this is awesome. No, this was awesome. And I thank you so much for this, for demonstrating all of those different things. Hopefully our audiences will benefit from it and take notes and do them for themselves, because they definitely help. They definitely change your mood. But I was thinking also, I forget where I read that recently, for men it's very difficult to admit to themselves that they might be in a very tough spot, and then it can translate into, I don't know, addictions or something like that. You know, different types of addictions. And it's interesting what, for example, you just showed us with that movement of empathy, holding a baby, and obviously it's like very natural for a woman to sort of do it. But have you studied, or are there any examples, because I think you and I also talked about this a little bit a while ago, how it's even more difficult for men right now, where, you know, going through all of these different emotions. Like for us women, I feel like it's so easy to just even express it, right? For men, it's not so much. Can you talk a little bit about that? What are you, if anything, what are you noticing?
Yeah, I had a conversation with a friend a couple of weeks ago, a man who's also a coach, about like the balance of being and doing. And I do think there's something around women are more socially encouraged
And allowed.
Exactly. Yeah, to feel our range of emotions. I mean, not completely, because I think there's still quite a lot of judgment around anger,
Right.
grief.
Yeah.
But it's definitely more acceptable. And men, they're definitely, for the most part, put in a box around, you know, what are the emotions that they can have, the okay emotions and the bad emotions. And yeah, I do think that there's a connecting to the being, connecting to ourselves, and what we're experiencing is challenging for everybody. But I do think men, I see it in for both genders. But I do think there's a unique challenge around being with grief or sadness, and possibly, you know, depression would be right there for men, because a lot of their conditioning is around doing and action and solving, and less about just being with, whoa, this is really hard, wow, I'm scared.
Yeah, it's actually, now I remember, I think when you and I talked about this offline, I mean, when we were not recording, I think there was something about, you said something about when you are able to sort of label the emotion that you're experiencing, then it's easier to process it.
Yeah.
But what I'm noticing among my friends is that I feel like not everybody is capable of actually pinpointing what they're feeling. So, you know, sadness, it's like, it's such a general word, right? And so can you talk a little bit about that, like labeling? And
I want to show you something.
Yeah.
I hope it'll come through. I think it might. Have you seen the wheel, the feelings wheel?
Maybe.
Okay. Here it is. It's really tiny, so it might be hard. But
oh wow,
this is it. Can you kind of read that?
Well, maybe you can send me a screenshot of that, and then we'll add it somewhere.
But it in the middle, there's sad, mad, scared, joyful, powerful, and peaceful. And then each of those feelings have 6 branching out from them. So like in joyful, there's excited, sensuous, energetic, cheerful, creative, hopeful. And those are all subcategories of joyful. And then there's even more categories. And in this conversation I had with my friend, who we did some training together, he can remember when we started to talk about feelings that he was like, oh, I thought, I'll kind of forget what he said, but he said something like, I thought there was just mad and glad. Mad, glad, sad. I think that's what he said. He said, I thought there were just 3. And there is a lot of truth there that, you know, now that we have a resource like this, I mean, even in myself, I consider myself fairly emotionally intelligent and fairly in touch with how I'm feeling. During a lot of these days in the quarantine, I needed to look at a list of feelings just to pinpoint what it was, because it was so confusing. Like I'm both grateful, but I'm annoyed. I'm, you know, scared, but I'm excited. I'm like, it was almost like a Charlotte's Web, like drawing a web across that image of different feelings, because so many are true at the same time. And without labeling them, without having a name for them, it's it kind of makes it's like meeting a new stranger and you don't know their name yet. Like there's a connection that happens when you can name them, and a deepening that can happen, and your ability to be with those feelings, both in yourself, just like the empathy thing, but also in others is really important. If I can be with shame and guilt in myself, then I can be with shame and guilt in other people. And that's an important skill to have.
Yeah, it definitely gives you clarity, because then again, you know how to manage it.
Right. I know how to, so I've been taking this class on positive intelligence, and the way that Shirzad Shamin talks about it is that when we're in these feelings of like guilt, shame, a lot of negative feelings, it's like putting our hand on a hot stove. And we don't need to stay there. Like our hand doesn't need to, oh yeah, that is hot. Oh, yep, let me just hang out here. No, that's the moment. As soon as we know we're going down that like inner critic, dark tunnel, saboteur kind of emotions, we can pull our hand off the stove and decide, okay, what is it that I need here? Is it empathy for myself? Is it looking at this through a new creative lens? Like looking at this, how can I solve this with innovation, creativity, you know, or any number of powers, inner powers that we all have. But without understanding the emotion, it's hard to counter it.
Yeah, it's super hard. I feel like if you don't sort of fully understand, you get stuck in it.
Right.
You get stuck in it, and I feel like, yeah, that some of the more, you know, darker moods come in, and you just sit in it, and it's hopeless.
And you stay here. You stay stuck in your head. And so one of the things I work with my clients a lot is reconnecting to their senses. And it's the same thing that we were talking about earlier, reconnecting to the body. Like, okay, you know, I've got this rose scented candle here. And when I start to feel overwhelmed and kind of hijacked, and my nervous system is like really heightened, you know, I can just close my eyes and take some deep breaths and get back in touch with that scent and drown out everything else, all of the worries, everything else, and just focus on, ooh, that delicious rose scent, and take that in and block out the other senses so that I can keenly focus on that one sense. Brings me back into my body, regulates my nervous system a little bit, and I forget about what I was worrying about.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And I could also almost smell this candle right now.
It's so delicious. I wish you could. I wish there was a way that Zoom technology could make that possible.
Yeah. So what are the silver linings that you're noticing about this lockdown?
Let's see. Yeah. I don't have any like sweeping big.
They don't have to be big.
Yeah. But I'm thinking about for myself, like what I've learned. I've learned, and I just in the last week, this is a pretty new learning, that tuning into my own needs and taking care of myself and trusting needs as they arise is like my biggest job right now. And I think that this is just such a strange time, and connecting with ourselves is always really important, but now more than ever, there is this self-connection, this like I don't know, I think about like you remember the tin can telephones? Where there was the string, and it's like that was a mode of connection. And it's like when the string gets tangled up, if we're not like really tuning into our own needs, because we could be tuning into the news, we could be tuning into other people's like anxiety, worry, we could be tuning into other people's needs, even not our own. I think that's what I was finding myself doing a little bit, like seeing, you know, oh, well, this seems to work really well for everybody else, but not so much me. So maybe something's wrong with me, or maybe I need to, you know, ignore the need or whatever. But yeah, there's just this like self-trust that is so important, and where we stay with ourselves instead of abandon the part of us that knows. Yeah. Like when I knew we needed to live on our own, it was tempting to like, oh, that's hard and that might be expensive, and like, oh, do I really need that? Can't I just make do a little longer? And with the making do things stacked on top of each other, like, oh, well, it's not for that much longer. Well, we don't know that. We don't know how long we're in this for. So it's like, I think for me, what I'm learning at this time is deeply tuning into my own needs and honoring them and acknowledging them when I can, so that I can make this situation a little bit better for myself and for others, you know? And I think there's also something about honoring and validating our needs that feels really good. And for many of us, and I don't know if there's a gender to this or if this is like a woman thing, but I would find myself kind of wanting, you know, wishing that someone else would recognize my, you know, like read my mind and know that what I really needed was this. And it's like, no, this during this time, like,
no, you have to speak.
Yeah,
you have to use your voice.
Up. Yep. And you're the only one on the hook for your own.
Right. Yeah. I don't think it's I think it's on either side.
Yeah.
I've known people on either side who just don't speak up and expect you to sort of read the mind.
Right.
It's interesting, when you were just talking about this, I also thought the word judgment came to mind. And one of the things, it's like sometimes, you know, when we're online these days, and there's so many different memes, you know, popping up, and some of them are funny, some of them I feel like tone deaf. But judgment comes in when, you know, there was like something that I saw. It said something about like, oh, this XYZ person, you know, by 10 a.m. already did like blah 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 blah, and just like don't sort of. So basically, the person who is writing it is feeling, I guess, you know, inferior to that other person, and so that is also some kind of a judgment, right, on either side.
Right.
This person who is productive can say like, why are you not productive? And this person is like, you know, you are making me feel so bad, even worse than where I am now, because you're doing XYZ things before 10 a.m. Have you been noticing any of that, any of those feelings in yourself, or maybe people you are talking to, your coachees, or people in the group?
Yeah, there's a real like low hum about productivity kind of all the time. Like, I think there's a lot out there that's like productivity hacks and productivity boot camp, and productivity is like this really sort of flashy sign that people that we're sort of taught to measure our self-worth based on how productive we can be. And I really don't like any of that. Like, I don't I think, again, it's the doing and the being stuff. And I think the most effective way to do is to blend and weave it in with who we're being. And sometimes,
and what the needs are for you in that moment, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, and I'm speaking as a former doer, productivity kind of hustler myself, where a lot of like how I felt about myself was based on how much I could get done in a day. So that's why I'm like, well, I don't like it. And I think that during this quarantine time, it's like we're all under the microscope even more, and being quote unquote productive is kind of changing while we're in this time, because we're not robots, we're not machines, we're not computers. We get tired.
Yeah.
And we have feelings. We have a lot of feelings right now while this is happening. We're worried about friends. We're worried about family. We miss our families. You know, we're in different countries than our families. We can't, our output can't be the only way we measure our worth.
Yeah.
Our worthiness is about who we are. Just showing up, just being together, being with other people, being ourselves. And I think we've gotten that wrong for a long time, tying worthiness to our hustle and our output.
Yeah.
And I see that in so many of my clients and in myself, where we are taught to focus on what other people need and want from us. And we've been sold this lie that that's productivity, like churning and churning out. Whoops. lost my earbud here. Churning and churning out for the external measures of success, instead of like looking above, like taking a higher view and thinking about, well, what are the things I really want to put my energy and attention into?
Yes.
What actually reflects me? Like, what are the true yeses that really feel like yeses? Not just the yeses because I don't want to disappoint somebody.
Exactly. Yeah, that is a big one. Yeah, don't do something out of fear to disappoint someone.
Right. And I think I took it a little bit off on a tangent, but yeah, there's
no, it's an important tangent. Thank you.
There's a softness. I think there's a softness and an empathy to weave that back in that is required of us right now during these times where our whole way of interacting with each other and the world has changed. And it will be different going forward. We don't know what it's going to look like. But being able to tune in to our own needs and remembering that we are enough. Remembering that just by showing up and engaging, or here, I have
or not engaging, right?
Right. I have to grab this prop.
Okay.
You know, like I think about the being stuff. So I have this great mask that my sister handmade. And I didn't realize how much I smile, how much I use my smile to interact with people. Like when I go to the grocery store, hey, how are you? And I was at Trader Joe's yesterday, and it was like, oh my gosh, I felt so much grief about not being able to see people's smiles.
But remember what we talked about when we did our portrait session. The smile is in the eyes, so don't worry about that. People still can see a smile.
Yeah, but it's
well,
it's not the same.
It's not. No, I agree with you. It's not the same. And in fact, I was talking to my accountability partner yesterday, and I was saying, you know what? I don't want to take any pictures of myself in a mask. I don't want, quite honestly, see any of my friends. And like, I understand we need to document and all of that stuff, but it's just like, it actually is painful for me. Like, I don't want to see this. I'm sorry. It's, maybe it's maybe I'm being selfish, whatever, but it's, I don't know. I don't like it. So I totally understand what you're saying. You're missing the smiles. I'm missing people's faces.
Yeah. And the reason I brought that up and went on another tangent was just that the being is enough, and that I think doing and productivity is an easy way to hide. It's a way we're really comfortable with. And it's a very tempting invitation to, just keep typing on the laptop and just kind of get lost in the productivity. I've so been there. I have so, overdone that and made that my numbing strategy. But that right now, just like smiling behind your mask, it's like having your own experience and being with yourself and being with others is enough.
Yeah.
It's not about churning out tasks.
How many, yeah.
And if that's where you are, I get it. And I would maybe look at how to bring a little more being into your experience, and honor your emotions. Because sometimes we're hiding in the doing because we're afraid of feeling the fear or the
yes, definitely. That the whole, there's another meme, right, that's circulating, something like, I've watched all of the Netflix, what now, right? It's I feel like, a lot of that also, or people saying I'm bored, I keep seeing this. And I remember one of my friends, I should actually reach out to him, maybe we can talk with him about this on a podcast as well. So he was asking, like, what emotions are you experiencing right now? And people started like listing some things, and I said, well, I see people are saying bored, they're saying bored, but I feel like it's not that they're hiding something behind it, maybe they don't even realize that, but I feel like bored, like when someone says in these times that they're bored, I feel like they're just sort of frozen, right? They are either don't know how to name the emotion that they're experiencing, they don't know how to manage it, they don't know how to cope with it. So yeah, they go into the activity mode of watching Netflix or something. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, obviously. I also need my outlet, and I just started Audrey Hepburn marathon where I'm watching all of her movies.
Oh, cool.
So but I mean, it's also an interesting thing for me to sort of think about, because it's just tough.
Yeah, maybe it's numbness.
Yes.
I think back to your earlier point, like if we don't have words for our feelings, it's really hard to like locate ourselves. And I could see moments that I've been really numb and really out of touch and kind of in that nervous system like freeze mode, that could come through as bored.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm numb, I'm out of touch, I don't know what to do, I don't know how to be. I don't know what to say to people. Right.
Yeah.
And numb is a really like that is definitely something that happens when we're in grief, and we're in shock. And as a country, as a world, it's the whole entire world, the level of uncertainty that we're dealing with around how long we will be in this spot, that's for many people the hardest part. There's a fear around getting the disease, of course, or there's a fear around like possibly giving the disease, now that we know that somebody without any symptoms can pass this on. But then there's this also broader, like, well, they're both broad, but that uncertainty of like, will we have birthday parties with human beings again? Will there be weddings? Will there be live music? Will there be, a million things that we all know and love?
Yeah. Okay, we need something something positive to leave our audiences with. Is there, well, you said you were studying this positive intelligence?
Let's go there.
Let's go there. I don't know, is there anything that you can recommend people to read?
Yeah.
or do something. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a book out that's called Positive Intelligence that is by Shirzad Chamine, and he is a Stanford professor. He also used to run CTI, the Coactive Training Institute, where I did my coach training. And the book is wonderful. And there's a lot about, so he looks at positive intelligence. He calls it mental fitness. So he has, I mean, I could go on for hours about his amazing research, but he talks about how we can unplug from our saboteur voices, the inner critics, and plug into our sage powers, like our inner sage, our wise self. And that's through that empathy, innovate, activate. I'm forgetting a couple others.
Well, this is good. I mean, it's okay. You don't have to remember. People will find out for themselves. Yeah.
People will read the book. I think it is an excellent way of thinking about mental fitness, like physical fitness, and practicing. He calls them PQ reps, positive intelligence reps, similar to what we were doing with the candle, where it's like touching into your senses and, you know, focusing on sensory connections in your body, instead of the sort of chatter in our mind. So he's got a lot of like neurological research and resources that show us how to rewire our brains, really. So that's an excellent book. He also did a TED Talk that I just love.
Okay.
And we can put the link up.
Yeah, if you can send me the link, that would be in the book, obviously, because I haven't read or even heard about it. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. I love our conversation so much.
Me too. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. And so maybe we can come up with another topic we can discuss, and hopefully it will be also as helpful to our listeners as today's conversation. People, if you loved this conversation with my friend Stacy, please, there's a button somewhere below this video, subscribe, and you will get more positivity in your day with the next conversation. Thank you so much for listening, and I love you. We both love you, and bye. Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.